Are you very hungry though?
Do you not want to eat your shoe?
Friends are looking tasty though.
Surely they are edible.
No, 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 no.
Monster, monster, cooking the monster. Cooking the Monster is proudly presented by Herbert, Matt, and Histrix. Monster, monster, cooking the monster tonight. Hi, ghouls and goblins. Welcome back to another fine episode of Cooking the Monster. As always, I'm here with Matley and Kistrix as we go down an amazing trail. A trail that leads to a stench of compost, decay, corpses, and horror. That's right, this week we're talking about the corpse flower.
Now, this is a vegetarian option. So, people here who've been looking at this show and being like, there's nothing in it for me, we've got your back.
Vegans, vegetarians. We're here for you.
Absolutely. Now, corpse flowers are basically flowers that grow on the graves of necromancers or powerful undead. So, you can find them in the wild. You can make your own if you want. Just requires, a little bit of murder and a couple of weeks. And you'll have yourself a very
a bunch
large-
of seeds, isn't that right? You
Yeah.
take the seeds and you can scatter the seeds around.
absolutely.
You can make a whole garden bed, really, and start some good industry. So if you're an industrious necromancer and you really just want to get out there and create specialist ingredients for banquets to impress people, then make sure your zombies tend the garden well. Get some of your blight knights or raise some higher powered undead and then bury them, and you should get a handful of seeds and you'll be able to grow a bunch of these corpse flowers. And because they are able to continually feed off other corpses, they'll continue to grow appendages, and you can take the bits that you need off of them as you go.
Now, the downside to the corpse flower is that it is malevolent and does hate the living. So if you are still a living necromancer, that may be a small issue. Doesn't really have a problem with the undead, but we'll see.
Well, that's what zombie servants are for, really.
Yeah.
They can deal with all the pruning.
Absolutely.
This is definitely sounds like my next campaign ideal.
Uh-huh.
Is having a carrion flower farm.
So, I mean, look, what we're getting out of this thing, we've got a whole bunch of components to the carrion flower. We've got the petals of the flowers themselves, long woody tendrils that are really quite supple here and there that you use to grasp and manipulate. I imagine they'd be quite bean-like or vine-like in some places. You could soften them if you needed to by boiling them over a period of time. But then at the center of the corpse flower, there's a cache of bodies, which it feeds on and slowly digests over time, which I imagine would generate some very interesting results.
Yeah, I think as the vegan and vegetarian option, because it is consuming bodies, we are going to be getting some of like your vitamin B12s, which you're going to be missing from other plant material. And that's going to be very important for our vegan party members as well.
Yeah, and obviously in order to sanitize what it's consuming into really quite fresh organic matter, it's going to be transforming those. You'll have a bunch of chemicals inside of it that can be used in other aspects of cooking or for other medicinal properties.
And the acids as well, the acids that it's digesting, you might actually find when you cut open the carrion flower that there might be some meats that you could actually consume within its stomach as well.
Which have already been cooked or treated. So if you wanted to go down a particularly specialist path, you could take certain types of meat, feed or certain types of living creatures,
Or dead creatures.
Or dead
we don't
creatures,
have to
that's
murder
right.
people. We can just
Yeah.
sustainably reuse.
So if you happen to have a corpse flower farm and you had a particular meal that you wanted to prepare, and you
Okay.
happen to find some halflings, just corpses lying around the place,
Absolutely.
then you could feed them to the corpse flower, and after a few days, I imagine,
Much the
Yes,
same way.
yeah.
you find them in a state of decomposition and preservation, because the acid and the oxygen-locked interior of the flower will keep away a lot of the bacteria that will decompose it otherwise.
It'll break down a lot of the sort of the connective tissue, so it'll be a softer meat. In much the same way that you'd take like a snail and feed it on garlic for several days before eating the snail, or butter to make it more rich to go through the digestive system. You could choose the things that we're feeding the corpse flower to.
Yeah.
Now, this is quite a destructive process for the corpse flower because you're literally cutting it in half to get to those digestive juices, and there's no guarantee you'll be able to get 2 flowers out of the single entity. It does have an intelligence, and it is a creature, and cutting it in half could well kill it. So you're taking a risk, but through careful pruning and experimentation, you'll be able to manage that effectively. But what are the things to watch out for?
The smell. It,
Oh, God.
it is a strong smell. Now that is partially, well, a lot of things with that level of smell with the flower are looking for carrion, flies, or other things to use as a pollinator. Personally, I've never seen a crossbreed of various carrion flowers that have been fertilized, but you could do that little experimentation, see what a crossbreed of different things would
Do you
raising-
think that's all to do with what it's consuming? So you might be able to control that by feeding it corpses, fresh corpses, as opposed to ones that it finds, and
Possibly,
might
possibly.
actually change the smell.
Yeah, and I mean, if you potentially if you tried different species, if you tried, say, insectoid creatures, perhaps if you tried some kind of like sahaguin or other aquatic creatures, you'd have more of
A fishy flavor.
smell or a fishy
That would be
flavor.
quite a concentration. But with that kind of concentration of smell, that's where you get the perfect ingredients to be able to ferment a really pungent sauce, like a soy sauce or a fish sauce. And that's something that you could actually make within the flower itself by adding a few tubes. You might even be able to create a corpse flower extract system where you're getting high quality produce out of a single flower consistently.
Yeah, kind of be maybe kind of almost reminding me a bit like making like a sauerkraut or something like that. The fermentation process that's going on.
And these are some pretty pungent flavors. So, I mean, really, what would you want to pair these with, Kistrix? How would you level out the intensity
Yeah.
of these flavors?
We do have some really, really strong flavors coming through. I would actually consider something maybe like a lemongrass here. Lemongrass is traditionally used with a lot of fish kind of meals to kind of prevent poisoning as well, and it is quite a strong flavour to match the strong flavour of their carrion flower meat as well. But I also thought that for some of the braver members in the party, it might just be nice with some of the flowering tops there as well. Just putting those into salads, having a look at maybe just, using salt and pepper as
Yeah,
well,
well,
just
I
to
imagine
season some of
the-
the top flowers
Yeah.
The
there.
concentration of flavor would really suck to the middle of that creature,
Yeah.
and
Some of the
dicing
white
up,
goes at the top.
shredding, dicing the vines as well as just using the extremities of the top
The
petals.
fronds would be the softest,
Yeah.
Yeah, the vines, I imagine, if they were boiled for a longer period of time, would provide a certain amount of roughage, but they'd still have nutrients running through the center of them. So stripping back the outside, kind of like a sugar cane, and you should be able to get to
Yeah.
some of those nutrients on the inside.
Absolutely.
You could be doing a succus with some of them as well, because of the xylem that runs through the outside of plants is kind of like the nutritive juice that's there. So you could be making like a juice.
The thing that you want to watch out for with the tendrils is that they are essentially the hands of this thing, and this thing does feed on corpses, so it's going to be handling corpses with
Yeah.
those. So if you're using the vines as a component, then just use the prestidigitation or just clean them thoroughly, or if you boil them, you should be able to get off a lot of the harmful bacteria.
Clean them if you're using them for a salad, but otherwise, boil them. Use them as a flavoring. Perhaps even just use a single corpse flower is going to give you a lot of ingredients if you're using it as some kind of flavoring or consistency.
Yeah, I think
So-
you can get very much a complete meal out of it because you do have all those different components. So you
And not just a complete meal, but you could make quite a considerable banquet even for larger creatures. If you were feeding, again, a table of giants, even smaller giants or larger giants, or any giant types, or if you had large creatures, even a sphinx as a companion or someone you were trying to impress, because it's not just the corpse flower itself has the ability to create zombies. So you can use the zombies, which is discussed in a previous video, how to prepare the zombies for consumption, as well as the corpse flower itself, and some of those flavors could be quite complementary because you'll have a variety of races and corpses in various states of decomposition, and you could create a full banquet from a light salad to bone broth, and I imagine there'd be some quite cheesy chunks of flesh as the semi-decomposed bodies would create kind of like a head cheese effect, where you boil down the head slowly and all of the juices come out and solidify into like a fatty mass.
If they could be doing like a kibbeh or something, or like something like a senchoy bao, and we could be using the meat within the stomach and then using the greener outside parts of the corpse flower to wrap and contain.
Yeah, it's really so exciting. That'll be an amazing thing to experience. And, you know, for a savvy adventurer or an industrious necromancer, really, the corpse flower is your go-to for impressing guests at your next dinner party. But we'd like to know what you think, so jump in the comments below and tell us all about your corpse flower experiences, what you've done with them, what you'd like to do with them, and perhaps any other tidbits from other universes that you'd like to add to our discourse. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Cooking the Monster.
Monster, cooking the monster tonight.